and looking forward to a good conversation. And it's always good to know we're among friends, so we'll share our insights about what we're living with and during these times. So again, welcome to our very first COVID-19 town hall. We actually hope to have more of these along the way, and to be able to provide some insights from some of the panelists we have today on our town hall for the panelists, as well as some other panelists along the way to provide some insights about what you all are seeing with our clients or patients and businesses, as well as what's going on with us, what's happening with us. And we don't want to forget that factor, because some of us, we heard some of the stories before before this actually started, about some folks have not left their house for 11 days. I mean, some of us are actually home, and it's really impacted us. So again, always being mindful about ourselves as well. I have a few items to share before we kick off and hear from our panelists, so bear with me, please. So first of all, I'm going to give a shout out to the Communication Committee, aka ComCom, me and team. And this is that they actually sparked this idea. Fantastic idea. Yeah. We've had the ability to be able to connect for a long time, but this actually kind of pushes us in those areas, right? What are we seeing with practices now that we've been talking about telemedicine? Is it kind of pushing us in that area, and what will tomorrow look like, right? So look at us getting together. If this is even better than the Brady Bunch, this is really awesome. So the panelists, first and foremost, they're going to provide their insights and what they're seeing in their space in our profession. But we always also want to be mindful and remind everybody to refer to those sites and resources that stay up to date, incredible sites such as CDC, AVMA, WHO, and many of those resources and links can be found on our very own COVID-19 updates resource page. And that can be found easily by going to the VetPartners website and clicking on that button, and it'll lead you to the resource page. That is a work in progress. Folks, send us resources, and we welcome resources. I think we're all in this thing together. So whatever we have to help us get through, please share those. Some of you have already shared some links and other resources that, again, if you haven't seen them there yet, that will be there imminently. I want to give a shout out also. Again, we have all these, Vet Partner members that do so much and actually help really move us all forward and keep us connected. I'm going to say many thanks to Kelly Baltzell, her team, and the Technology Special Interest Group for really actually, again, sparking the resource page, as well as sparking the panel discussion. I don't know if you've contributed to the panel discussion on COVID-19, but it's very lively and a lot of questions. That's a place where we can connect as well between our meetings and our town halls. So please visit and please join in the discussion. It's a great place, again, to stay connected with each other. Something interesting as far as how we've been impacted, the Vet Partners, that I think if you were at our annual meeting, you heard quite a few times that we are preparing for our strategic planning meeting in April. And then you may have seen some e-blasts saying we're getting ready for our strategic planning session in April. And we asked people for insight and got lots of fantastic feedback that we will need to be able to look at, what does the future of Vet Partners look like. However, what we've had to do is we've had to push that to later on in the year. So that's a continuing work in progress as well, but also some things have changed since we met just a few weeks ago. So again, thank you for connecting. Let's stay together. It's another benefit of Vet Partners by having so many resources with each other, as well as friends. The relationships and the friendships that we formed, I tell you, are invaluable when it comes to especially these times. So again, thank you for joining. What you can look forward to this afternoon is we've got 6 panelists that will share their insight. We're going to give each panelist about 3 to 5 minutes to give an overview about what they're seeing in their particular area of expertise concerning COVID in these times. And then we'll go through and ask each of the panelists questions that have been submitted by our members already. So thank you for submitting questions ahead of this town hall. And last but not least, if we've got time, We're going to open up the last few minutes for additional questions from the folks who are actually on this town hall now. Okay, just to give you a reminder of who are the panelists. We've got Karen Felsted, and she'll be discussing the area of practice finance. We have Martin Traub-Werner, who will actually share this veterinary industry impact tracker. Not sure if you've seen that, that's been launched, but he's going to take us through some steps and the kind of why that was developed and all that. So we look forward to that. Also, Betsy Choder. Betsy Choder is with us via phone, and we look forward to hearing her insights on staffing and human resources. We have Nancy Dewitz. We'll look at and discuss workflow innovation, some ideas, what she's seen, and what could actually help us through these times, especially if we're having to do things differently nowadays. We've got Debbie Boone. We'll address client communication. And that's always heavy, but what do you do during these times? And then Douglas Brooks. He's going to share the perspective from multi-hospital networks. Wow, what a lineup. Okay, I'm going to start off with Karen Felsted. Karen, this is your opportunity to take a few moments and share some of your insight that you've seen, recommendations. Karen, it's all yours.
Happy to do it. Deb, I think you said that this was going to be the first of the COVID-19 town halls, but I got to tell you, I hope it's the only one. I hope that means that we're over this faster than we're all dreading it may be. So,
agree.
So I think the first thing that I wanted to say is that we're business consultants. I mean, that's what we focus on when we go into practices. So I think our natural inclination is to say, let's start talking about preserving revenue, generating enough cash to pay our expenses, and keeping people employed, which is absolutely what I think we need to be focusing on. However, I think that this is really important, particularly because a large percentage of our members are not veterinarians, to recognize what that context has to look at. There's a certain amount of changes in legal requirements about what practices can and can't do. There's certainly a large number more recommendations than legal requirements from the AVMA and others, and just the common sense. This isn't just your typical recession. We have the whole public health aspect of this as well. I think issues that practices are having to deal with within the context of which they're going to operate is, okay, have they been designated an essential business? Very few states have actually listed veterinary services or veterinary practices as an essential business. Most of us are operating as if that is true. I certainly believe that's true. It's certainly what AVMA and all of the other organizations are advocating for. But within that is what kinds of services should practices be offering. Some states and jurisdictions have gotten a little bit more specific about what is classified as an essential service. Others have not, and they're leaving it to the judgment of the practice itself. And I do think that there's variations depending on when or where practices are located and the kinds of services that they offer. But I think what we as consultants have to recognize is this isn't full steam ahead for most practices. It's going to be some modification of how they operate. We also have some obligation to preserve personal protective equipment so that can be routed to human hospitals. So that may limit some of the services that we offer, or we may have people sewing masks for us. We may not use typical surgery gowns. We may use something else. And then, of course, we have a huge obligation to protect clients, employees, and public health in general. So it's not just your typical recession where people don't have money or are reluctant to spend it. We've also got this huge issue with, obviously, the virus. But I think it's important, particularly if you haven't thought through those or don't understand what the guidance is and the recommendations are out there, that we have an obligation to make sure that when we're making recommendations to clients, we're talking about that. I do think that everyone's going to take a hit here. You know, the big question is how much of a hit is it? Personally, if a practice came through this and broke even and paid all their expenses, kept their employees, and made their debt payments, I think that's a win. So I think we've got to be realistic about what expectations are. I think strong leadership is essential in this. And I think practice owners and the management team have to focus on how do we fulfill our role as public health experts and keep people safe, as well as continue to take care of animals. So specifically on financial suggestions, if you're continuing to be busy, if a practice is continuing to be busy, and many are, although this is a situation that changes essentially daily or multiple times a day, but if a practice is busy and is bringing in more money than they spend, they should start an emergency fund if they don't have one, or add to it if they do. If we were planning for a recession that was 8 months away, one of the common recommendations is to reduce debt. Right now, beyond the minimum debt payments that you're required to make, I would put money in a cash fund rather than reduce debt at this point. If you do not have, or if a practice does not have a line of credit, or individuals have a line of credit, I think it is still possible to get one. It's a little bit different than the 2007 to 2009 recession, but I would go soon to your bank and talk to them about that. But a line of credit could be very, very helpful, particularly if you've got collateral that you can secure against it, and whether that's real estate related to the practice, or it's equipment, or it's personal retirement funds that you're not planning on accessing for a while. That just makes it much more likely that a practice or an individual can get one. Obviously, when it comes to revenue, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this because a couple of the other panelists will, but within the confines of what we have to deal with, we want to do as much work as possible. We want to communicate with our clients. They need to know that we're open. We need to communicate changes in operating procedures to them. And we need to focus on different ways of providing services. So telemedicine, medication and food delivery, et cetera. And I'll let the rest of the panelists cover some of that. When it comes to expenses, obviously need to consider postponing major expenses. So capital equipment purchases, major renovations, unless you're seeing a really good deal and you're one of those practices that has a large enough emergency fund that you can take on that expense. We want to review all expenses. Inventory control in many practices is still not as efficiently handled as it could be. So there's definitely some reduction in cash flow that can happen there. Staffing, before laying people off, we want to look at it and say, okay, can we postpone any raises we had planned? Do we need a hiring freeze here? Could we do a voluntary reduction in hours? Are there people that would like to take time off? We may also find that we're getting a reduction in hours simply because we have people that are staying home to take care of kids, or they're self-isolating or whatever, and we'll get into sick pay in a minute. When it comes to debt and rent, so some of those fixed expenses that don't fluctuate with revenue, I don't think it's too soon to start talking to landlords and to banks about what options there may be for postponement, depending on how things go, particularly if this looks like it's going to end up being stretched out. I've certainly heard stories on both the rent side and the debt side of practices that are getting those concessions. I think everybody's aware that there's been a delay in tax filing deadlines and tax payment deadlines on the individual side, the personal side. Too late for the corporate returns. They were due March 15th. But that's a little bit of a relief there. We're still going to have to pay taxes, still going to have to file, but there's a little bit more time because so many people are dealing with just the challenges that we have here. I think another of the questions that comes up financially is related to a recession. We won't know if we're in a recession until this fall. A recession is 2 quarters with a decline in economic growth. So won't know that until later on. My personal feeling is we're not going to be able to avoid it. I think the big question is what's going to be the length and the magnitude of that recession. And a lot of that is just going to be how long are people out of work? They don't have any cash. They're barely paying their mortgage or their rent. What's that going to do to the amount they're willing to spend on pets? So, even though we don't technically know, the government hasn't, stated that we're in a recession for a number of months. I think we act as if we think it's here. And of course, if you've lost your job, you're in a personal recession, so to speak, even if it's not technically one. The last thing I would mention from a financial standpoint is that I think practice owners and the management team need to be up to date on financial resources that are going to be available to help either their practice or to help people who work for them. And that's going to be things like SBA disaster assistance loans, some of the tax credits that will come from the required extended leave from HR 6201. There are some exemptions from 6201. I don't think it's clear now what it's businesses under 50 employees, but it's not clear, is that going to be an automatic exemption, which nobody has seemed to suggest that I've heard, or what they seem to be saying is that your business will not be viable. I think viable means you're going to go bankrupt, not just that your profits are going to be reduced. So, but obviously want to keep up with that. I think you want to have some understanding of what your state is doing regarding unemployment for employees who have reduced hours or have been laid off. And we're also still all waiting to see what the stimulus package is going to look like. I think we feel pretty comfortable it's going to be some combination of individual payments to people, and that's probably going to be related to how much money they make. So obviously less for the high earners, more for the ones who make less, and then some kind of loans as well for businesses and some other things too. It's still wending its way through Congress, but I think owners should look at that. They need to know for their own businesses, but the more information we can provide to employees, because if you're an hourly employee living paycheck to paycheck, this is a really, really scary time.
Oh, thank you, Karen. That is so valuable and very insightful, and it really covered a lot of ground when it comes to finances. And it seems like that a lot of some of the items that you're talking about are work in progress and changing. And so more to come on that as time rolls out, especially like the details and the stimulus bill and all that. So thank you very much, Karen, for sharing that. Appreciate it. Next up, Martin Traub-Werner. I do believe you've got a show for us looking at the veterinary industry impact tracker, if you will, please.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And so hopefully, I hope everybody is safe and healthy and their loved ones are safe and healthy. It's a certainly unprecedented time. I'm going to share a tool that the Vet Success team put together. I'm going to put it up here. You can find this on our website under resources. If you navigate to resources, coronavirus, COVID-19. Oh, look at that. I navigated away. Let me show you that link actually works. It's called the Veterinary Industry Impact Tracker. Can you see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Realizing that I need my mouse to do what I want to do. Always be prepared. So I was saying at the beginning of this that I'm disappointed that we actually had to build this tool. And it's zoomed in here. So I'm disappointed that we had to build this tool. What we've done is we've taken visits from 2,700 practices and mapped them daily. And so what I'm showing here is a national, and so this is filterable. You see up at the top, filters by date, state, municipal area, and practice size. And practice size, just to give you a sense of it, is less than 1.5 million or greater than 1.5 million, just small versus large practices. And it looks at both daily revenue and daily invoices per practice. Invoices are a proxy for visits. And what I've done is I've pulled up here the national numbers for last week's Sunday, March 15th through March 21st. And then March 22nd rather, and then this week starts with March 23rd, Monday, March 23rd, which was, and this updates every afternoon. So we've got Tuesday's numbers in here as well. And you can see that if you look over that week, visits were down about 8%, revenue down about 4%, and that's nationally. But what I want to show is what happens when you start, and this is dynamic. So you can change the filters. If I change the date filter just to last Thursday, Friday, and this week, you can start to see significant changes in revenue and invoices. And again, these are the national numbers. Two other interesting things here is if you look at pharma, just pharma revenue, you see that And so this is the invoices don't change on this. This is just a slice of the revenue. So you see invoices are down, visits are down 14%, but pharma revenue is up 11%. We've looked at this a couple of times in a couple of different ways, and our expectation of this, or our understanding of this is practices moving out multiple doses and enough doses to people who are about to shelter in place, or starting to protect and make sure that they've got enough months of protection. And I think that this is probably short-term activity only. Again, if you look at the services revenue alone, you see the services revenue is down 12%. And again, this is national. Watch what happens now if I take just last Thursday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And we look at just California, right? California has taken a much more significant hit. And if you just look at services revenue, it's, even worse. And California is one of the earliest places that is sheltered in place. And that's if you take last week. If I start to take out some of the days from last week, so give me a sec here. Take out. Sorry, I'm just going to show you Thursday, Friday of last week. Thursday and Friday of last week. Thursday and Friday is where you start to see it really change. And then if we just look at the same 5-day period, and now I just want to look at the state of, I just want to look at New York City.
Wow.
You see very significant changes in New York City, right? Mm. And if you look at New York just this week, Monday and Tuesday, you see revenues off 40%. And that's services revenue. I apologize. I should make it all revenue. The change at this point, pharma's off 12%, services off 38%. So total revenue off 36%. And this is on, admittedly it's on only 40 practices, but that's 40 practices all in New York State. So again, I wanted to show you just some of how dynamic this is. You can slice and dice and play with it. Again, available. We'll update it every day. The numbers are concerning. They're legit concerning. And so, we've made this available to the industry for people to keep track of the impact. That's all I got, Deb.
That's great.
Yeah, Martin, that is. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just a question, it's been shared, the helpful tool, again, too bad that had to be developed. But is that something that we can add to our VetPartners resource page, and or if so, Elizabeth?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. You should feel free to share that, with anybody who can get some value and use out of it.
And Martin, this is Bruce. That wouldn't capture online pharmacy revenue, or would it?
No, that's correct. At this point in time, it doesn't capture online pharmacy revenue. We're going to, because of our relationship with VetSource, we're already working to show the increase. And we've only got access to the VetSource data, but we'll show access. We'll show online order volume before too long here, and then I wish that I wasn't planning out 3+ weeks of this thing, but I legit think we need to be thinking that far out. 3+ weeks out, we'll have a more integrated view as well.
Yeah, I think qualitatively what I've been hearing is that there's been a significant uptick in the online pharmacies. I haven't spoken to anyone at VetSource or Vet's First Choice, but I've been in correspondence with 800 Pet Meds and Chewy and others, where they're just like going crazy. So I think, and I thank you for sharing the data, one of the concerning things for me is that practices do not have to see this revenue downturn now. They can be dispensing medications within VCPR to get everybody 6 to 12 months of meds, whether that be preventatives or chronics, and they can still continue to do wellness exams. We just have to change our MO to do all of this remotely, which is completely legit, and we need to encourage all of our members and the practices that they're consulting to choose a provider and just go virtual on all of this. Don't disrupt the business if you don't have to.
Yeah, on the online pharmacy, I mean, I can tell you from the VetSource side, and I think Kim London's on the line. Probably, you got to be careful because I have this tendency of sometimes inflating numbers. So I took Kim, keep me honest. But the volume increase is significant. There's definitely the volume increases there. And frankly, I don't know if you've seen on LinkedIn, there seems to be a move afoot for people to remind pet owners that you can actually buy from vet-approved pharmacies, that the money does not need to leave the channel. When we buy from Chewy and 1-800-PET-MEDS, the money leaves the channel, and that money is not available to the vet teams that can support them. And I just caught wind of this post that's going around just last night. I gather it's been going around for quite a bit, but I would encourage all of us to be reminding every pet owner that money does not need to leave the channel.
No, it does not.
Thank you, Martin, very much.
I was saying, if anybody
Kim,
wants to make a comment quickly, I can. I'm going to chat in on some information that's on the chat as well.
Super. Thank you, Kim, and thanks for joining us. All right, thank you for that discussion. More to come for sure. Next, we have Betsy Choder. She'll be discussing staffing and human resources, and she will also share some online resources here with us as well. So, Betsy, it's all yours.
Great. Oh, the legal world is just in a, what do you call it, deep dive here. We have what I keep seeing a lot of my clients are calling anxiously, fearfully, what's going to happen? Do I have to close my doors? I can't afford to pay my employees. But it appears that even as of today or yesterday, when the CARES Act passed, as well as what's going on with the IRS, to provide employers with some type of relief as far as wages go. I'm getting feedback. Is that me, or does everybody hear this okay? I'm on the phone.
We can hear you. I hear the feedback, but I think it's somebody else that may need to mute.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was that. I wasn't sure. And I'm not sure. Should I, the staffing issue, I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that right now, and I think Karen mentioned it slightly in her presentation, that the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA, applies to obviously employers with more, less than 500 employees. But most of our clients fall within the small business, and I'm going to use the word exemption because that just got clarified last night by the Department of Labor. So I just want to go over real quick, if you don't mind, the two major circumstances under which it would affect most of our clients, or any client where they have to pay that paid sick leave. So in case anybody's not clear about it, there are the 2 weeks, which is up to 80 hours. It doesn't mean 14 days. It does mean the 80 hours of paid time, paid sick leave at the regular rate of pay if an employee is unable to work because either needing to be quarantined, or they were told to stay inside, or they're seeking a medical diagnosis. That is capped, just so everybody knows, at $511. It has to be the regular to pay over that 80 hours, $511 per day, or the maximum of $5,110 per employee. Can't go over that. Now, I know that sounds, and this is for full-time and part-time employees. Now, if it's for other reasons, such as having to care for an individual or a child under the age of 18, who's subject to the quarantine, or for the child whose school is closed or there's a child care provider, or even if there's a similar, substantially similar condition, as they said, that the employee is facing, that's 2/3 of the pay, which is capped at $200 or $2,000 for the entire paid leave. This is the emergency paid leave part of the law. Now, then we jump into the extended FMLA, which has a requirement that the employee has to have worked for the employer for at least 30 calendar days. That goes where it's up to additional 10 weeks of paid leave, but again, there's a cap on it. The maximum is $10,000 that you can pay to that employee. You also do not have to pay them for the first 10 days. So that FMLA doesn't start right away. You can say, hey, you can be on FMLA, but we are not required to pay you the first 10 days. They can take, if they have it, their vacation or paid sick leave time for that first 10 days, but an employer cannot say that they have to. They are allowed to, and there's, for the emergency leave, what I just talked about, they are not required to take it at all. I just want to make sure that everybody's understanding this. And I hope I didn't get that backwards while I'm talking. Okay, worse for an attorney to misquote, right? What happened recently, and as of last night, the Department of Labor, and under the law, the Department of Labor and the IRS and Health and Human Services are supposed to, during the next few weeks, keep updating and keep telling or helping employers define what this law means. Now, I jumped away from what Karen mentioned. Employers who have less than 50 employees, which is most of our clients, I think, they are exempt from having to pay this if, and I will quote, it would jeopardize the viability of the business as a going concern. And it's not so much the viability. We know what that means, if the business can stay open. What's going to happen, I think, in the law is what does as a going concern means? And I think that's where, as the future holds, they're going, the lawmakers, our legislators are going to have to define it, or case law, whatever comes up. So let's see, I'm trying to look at all these notes because everything keeps coming in new. I have given a list of websites. What I don't want people to do, hopefully, is get panicked by the headlines, that people have to shut their doors because they can't afford to pay their employees. It's a new reality now. Employers should be able to, and I with all the other panelists, make up a plan, show what, how much you're bringing in, the new reality as we're calling it. See if you are able or going to be able, in case you have a new hire or in case 3 people have to leave. Right now, there's no paid leave required. It doesn't start until April 1st. It becomes effective on April 1st. And there's no retroactive. If they're out on paid leave now, you don't have to provide them for these couple of weeks that they've been away. It's just going forward from April 1st on. I'm trying to go through my questions that I get from a lot of my clients, so I'm trying to answer those. Hopefully they apply to everyone else. I've given a list of websites. What I would like for people to do in the future is look at the sources. The Department of Labor, there's an excellent one that was just put up. There's Q&A on a lot of these sites, Department of Labor, the IRS. So for example, if for the, in order to get cash, the IRS is saying, okay, beginning immediately, you do not have to pay payroll taxes. Use that money for the paid sick leave or the emergency FMLA. That's the Social Security, the Medicare. Those costs can be withheld and paid to the employee. You don't have to pull them out of your savings or your emergency plan. It's just use that money. And if that money runs out, the IRS is saying you will contact us and we will give you that money in advance, as an advance. They give examples of what that means. So if you have to pay, for example, an employee, there's $5,000 and you have $8,000 in your payroll taxes, take the $5,000 out of the payroll taxes immediately to pay him or her. If you don't have enough money, that's where the IRS comes in, and they have a link that you can contact them for that. Different states have different laws. Make sure you look at your state Department of Labor website. Do not just rely on the federal department. We've gone over, I think Karen was mentioning about the exempt, not only the exemption, but the sheltering, the different wages, the different requirements that are being held. I think veterinarians are essential business practices in any state, but there are times when you're going to think, oh my gosh, I don't know what I am, and I need to shut my doors. I can't stay open. Let's see, what else can I tell you? I think the websites are the good place to start. If you have questions, I'm trying to keep to the 3 to 5 minutes because I know we have a lot of people on. There are tax credits available. There are loans with the new, they finally passed the recent CARES Act, which is going to allow covered loans to businesses that qualify, and most businesses do qualify, and there are limits on it. It's a low interest rate for the loans, 3%, 5% for the loans. There's no personal guarantee required. Unfortunately, the bill is 619 pages. I have not had time to review all the pages and haven't looked up the summary of the law, but it will cover employers for covered loans, for institutions that are allowed to give those out. Somebody on the panel might have more information on that than I do, and being a lawyer, like I said, I'm sorry, I didn't look that up. I'm more in the employment law HR area. I'm going to wait for the questions because I could talk for at least an hour on this.
Can I ask you just
trying just to summarize as much as I could.
Payroll tax.
Thank you, Betsy. Debbie?
Yeah, Betsy, you mentioned the payroll tax and the employer. Now, is that just the federal employer's part? Is it the matching FICA? Is it the state tax that it has to be submitted to, or is that just federal?
What I was talking about was just the federal. I think we have everybody from different states on the line. So for the IRS, it's the payroll taxes for the federal withholding, Social Security, and Medicare.
Thank
From
you.
what
Thank you
I
for the
read.
question.
I think
That's a
it's
great
just
question.
FICA and Social Security. I don't think they can take it against the federal withholding because that's a fiduciary tax. So
That's
No, the
the
federal
employee.
withholding was actually mentioned. It was the
was
federal
it?
withholding.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a surprise. Okay.
I think, and I'm looking at the IRS page right now. So that's, I did mention Sally paying Paul, but let me just look real quick. All right.
Okay.
But that's okay. I'll jump in as I find it.
Good deal.
Like I said,
Betsy, thank you so much, really. And then
Oh, I do want to add,
yes.
thank you, but I do want to add one more about staffing because you mentioned the I-9. If you're hiring now, they've also relaxed the law regarding hiring. So I want to stress that. You do not have to actually get that before, it's required at day one that you have those, the list, the documents. You can now write in COVID-19 on the I-9 form, if everybody knows what I'm talking about when you hire staff. And under COVID-19, you can actually wait for 3 days until until the person shows up for work to get the documents. Because in some instances, just like under OSHA, you do not want a new employee coming into work if they are exhibiting any signs of COVID-19. Your offer of employment can be rescinded if they are showing signs. I mean, there's a lot of good laws out there to keep clinics and everybody safe and healthy.
Yes.
So
Did you say 3 days, Betsy?
3 days, yep. It used to be the first day they show up for work.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have 3 days because you can ask them to actually scan it or email it or send it to them. You don't actually have to physically see it until they show up for work.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, Betsy, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And again, more to come in our discussion after we've had a chance to hear from everybody. And that leads us to Nancy Dewitz. Nancy will discuss workflow innovation. Nancy, it's all yours.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I guess, it's one of those things where we kind of wish we weren't here, but here we are. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about was, this is changing every minute of the day. I've talked to so many practices, and what are they doing? How are they coping? What are they doing to cope? As they go along, and it does seem to be kind of a moving target across the board. Something I started chatting with practices about, and actually talking about at some of the conferences as we were talking more and more about telemedicine, was kind of an idea where in the drop-off situation, I was running into practices that were doing a lot of drop-offs before this happened, right? It's just the nature of the business. They have drop-offs. And I felt that education was missing in those drop-offs, because we know how it is and how it's crazy at the end of the day. And I had some practices that told me they had up to 70% of their drop-offs. So I started just doing a little bit of polling. We asked the question during our conferences, and the kind of the level that I put was, do you do more than 20%, 20% or more drop-offs in the day? And there was a lot of hands raised. So it's definitely something that's been out there for a while. What I've been working with some of the practices, some of them that have attended our sessions actually have contacted me, looking at what are some of the telemedicine ways that we can stay in touch and we can work with our clients. And obviously those guidelines are changing every day. I don't profess to know every single one of them by state, but my advice to all of them has been this: if you're still seeing patients and they're dropping them off, the concierge type of idea where they're driving up and handing the pet, there are so many ways that we can continue to stay in touch with that client, whether it's in the parking lot or at their home or maybe their place of business, where we can use video if their infrastructure holds up to it. We can use telephone. I mean, just getting on the phone and talking with them on the speakerphone through that exam is going to help with a lot of things. And most of the practices that I've been working with agree that during a visit, a lot of things come up that they don't think to tell the person that they handed the pet to when they drop that pet off. It comes up during the exam. So it's important to have that client-doctor conversation while they're examining the pet. So that doesn't have to be video. I have cornfield internet here, so there's a lot of people still in that position. But you can do this on a flip phone, and face it, a lot of our clients today are getting elderly. They have flip phones, right? So you can just have them call you or you call them. But it's that communication that has to stay open. If they are moving to telemedicine, the thing I've been telling my clients is take a breath. I'm part of a bunch of different chats. I have seen so many people tell me in a hurry how I do this. Tell me today how I do this. I need one click. I need a quick answer. And we have to slow our clients down a little bit. Have them take a breath, because they're going to have misses in their client medical notes. They're going to have dropped calls because they haven't planned ahead and thought ahead about the products they should be using. They're going to implement and spend time on things that may or may not help them. So what I've been telling my clients is, okay, you want to implement this. We know it's got to happen because you're in an area that you have to do this. Let's take a breath and evaluate quickly what's good for you. But I've seen so many people that just say, throw me the easy button. And I don't think that there's an easy button in everywhere, because I've talked to clients today or yesterday that were doing something different last Friday than they were doing yesterday. So it's really a moving target for all of us. We're under a lockdown here in Wisconsin. We've been that way all week. It's definitely a whole new world out there. Our bars and our restaurants had to go to takeout as of last week. So it's all different and it's all changing. But the biggest thing I think we can do for our clients is help them from a personal standpoint. They are all feeling so much pressure, and everybody I've talked to, I've just said, okay, let's just take a deep breath and let's think about what you want to accomplish and then go after those goals. People have been putting up, in a lot of these chats, so many different resources, so many different products, and they just, what do we need to accomplish what we need to do? Is it FaceTime? Is it Zoom? Is it this? Is it that? For people that are new to Zoom, I've had clients that didn't realize that they could do individual numbers for each meeting that they're holding. I got caught with this when I first started using Zoom. I put out a meeting and all of a sudden somebody came into my meeting. Well, it's because I was using my personal ID. Make sure you remind them not to be using a personal ID when they set up meetings. So all those kinds of things, as they're hurrying to do this, is going to cause them to have issues and a little bit more anxiety than they need to have. I guess I've been pointing them all towards AVMA to some extent, because that stuff seems to be coming pretty fast and furious as to what's going on there. But really making sure that they're infrastructure is going to be set up to do whatever they're going to do. If they have cornfield internet, I'm recommending telephone. Telemedicine started with telephone. It's not called video medicine, so it's okay if that's what they need to do. But it's really keeping the lines of communication open with the clients. Questions?
Nancy.
Yes, ma'am.
What we'll do is that we'll hear from Debbie and Doug, and then we'll open up for more questions. But let's hear it. Nancy, thank you for that. I mean, just take a breath. I think it will help a lot of folks. So thank you very much for that insight. Next up, we've got Debbie Boone that will discuss client communication.
Well, I think we've got sort of two tracks of communication going here, and one is communicating with our clients and letting them know about the change in protocols, and the other one is communicating with our team, because sometimes the team are very concerned about their own health and are they going to be exposed and what is happening here. So I think we have some really good resources. I've been talking to people about the AHA infection control guidelines. These things are excellent tools for us to use. You know, I kind of try to put into perspective, anybody who works in an animal hospital spends their entire life battling zoonotic disease, and we should be really good at this. I mean, we are considering, you know, rabies, lepto, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, brucellosis, I mean, you name it. And so these are systems that we should not have to go to great lengths to put into place, because they should already be doing those things. And so we're putting it into a little perspective. What I'm seeing from the managers, and like this is, as everybody has said, this is really a rolling tide, and it starts at one state or in one side of the country, kind of rolls down to different states as the rules change, and they change every day. What the majority of clients, my clients, are all doing is parking lot care. They are asking clients to come to the parking lot. They're taking the pets inside. They're doing the care. They're calling them on the phone, or they're video chatting, and then they're releasing back out, hopefully getting payment over the telephone, so there's really no interaction whatsoever. They're using personal protective equipment. Many of them have even kind of putted on that to using Playtex rubber gloves and a bucket of bleach water to use for sanitation of the gloves. I've seen people talking about autoclaving surgical supplies and surgical gloves, and there's even been a little recipe on there about how to do that. You know, to me, it's really funny because I've been doing this such a long time, and I can remember when I first started in 1985 that we were required to reuse syringes and autoclave them. So this is kind of going back to old school and the conservation of supplies that we needed. But what I have been instructing all my clients is to build a message that says, here's the protocol. It's kind of a bullet point, step by step. And how you present this, the tone of it matters. Because if you say, you know, we're afraid of you, and so we're blocking you out of our building, the message to that is we're doing this to serve ourselves. But what I've been telling people is we want to make this a message that says we are serving all. And we want to make sure that we're here for you, we're here for your animal, and to do that well and to keep all of us safe and protect you, protect them, and to make sure we're here. These are the systems that we're putting into place. And so we kind of create a bullet point list with a message that goes out on social media. I've been instructing my clients to boost these messages on Facebook, because we all know how the algorithms work, and they're going to be limited if we don't put $10 behind them to get the message out. Emailing all the clients a letter that goes out to all of them, using text messaging, two-way texting, using the apps that they have. Basically, this is pushing notifications out. I had a conversation the other day with a telemedicine company doing a demo Teletales, and they said, you know, I had a guy who was still using paper charts call me up and go, I need to do telemedicine. And he was like, I can't help you because you don't have any electronic records. So, you know, I think veterinarians who have kind of insisted on staying in the past and have not moved forward are probably going to struggle more than those who are digital natives and much more savvy about using these things. The other side of that coin, the staff. These are, you know, some people are concerned about themselves. They're concerned about their loved ones at home. If they have elderly parents or immune compromised themselves or others. So what I'm seeing out there is practices who are saying, okay, you decide. You know, if you're not comfortable, we're not going to make you come in here. Others are volunteering and stepping up. Hospitals are splitting their teams because if I see this particularly in the larger hospitals, because they'll have 50 employees and they can make 2 teams, and they'll work, you know, three-day shifts, and then that group stops and the other ones work 3-3-day shifts, and so they're always alternating the risk of having those people. If one person got contaminated, then, you know, then the whole business shut down and quarantine. So the managers are really stepping up to be creative in how they're handling this situation. I have just today and late yesterday afternoon been seeing on some of my social media groups where the layoffs are starting, and this sort of mirrors Martin's information. Is we're seeing, you know, 20 to 40% reduction in the traffic flow of hospitals as the government's changed the rules and cranked down a little bit more. The other communication I've been telling, because Kim, and I know she'll talk about this, but I did ask her the other day, are you guys swamped? And the answer is yes. We have 4 times what we normally have, and we are pushing as hard as we can and working day and night to try to get these out. So I also think it's important to set expectations of delivery times with clients, because if they are not getting them and they think they should get them, you know, in a timely manner, then we need to let them know to, you know, it might be 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, when typically it would have been 1. And so I think that there's a lot of moving targets out there. The staff is concerned about their, you know, work. If they're unemployed, how do they get employed? And of course, that's a state by state thing. We're dealing with every state doing something a little bit different, and, you know, the Department of Labor is sending out guidelines. Telemedicine, obviously a great communication tool. Jessica Vogel saying put up a telemedicine Facebook group, and within 2 hours, it had like 400 people, and now there's over 1,000. So basically created herself a part-time job in this Facebook management group. But people realize they need to do this. They need to get out there and get involved. And fortunately, you know, our companies have stepped up. I know Bruce Babelbark is doing some free connection and months, and Vitus Vet is doing the same thing, and VetNow is doing the same thing. And so I just think we have resources that people are coming to gather to help. The other thing that I've been talking to my clients about, and Karen mentioned about the finances. The finances are coming, and I have managed through 3 or 4 recessions now. And I say put these systems in place early. So this is one of the things I'm absolutely telling my clients is get on board with, you know, different kind of financing. Know that it's going to happen. Go ahead and put it into place. If you have some slow time, this is a prime opportunity to take advantage of this. The things that you never had time to do before, now it is time to do these things, and set it into place for when it comes back. Because I do, you know, we all know it comes back. It's the economic cycle constantly moves. And I've been warning my clients for at least a year that another recession is coming. They need to be stockpiling cash and watching their expenditures. And some listened and some went to Hawaii. So, you know, it's the way it works, right, folks? That's we look at these financials and we know what they do. So, yep.
Yep. Debbie, thank you so much. I mean, again, we're covering a lot of ground, and you can see we're sharing insight from, you know, all that we're seeing out there. And again, thank you so much. We're going to introduce Douglas Brooks, and he'll be speaking on the perspectives from multi-hospital networks. Doug, it's all yours.
Great. Well, I know many of you on the phone, and I mean, as a new VetPartners member, first exposure to a lot of you guys, but I represent Compassion First. I'm the VP of Business Development. So my job is to talk to a lot of you on the phone, as well as member hospitals, about joining the Compassion First Network. But I did spend some time this morning on our daily, we're having daily COVID operation calls. So I did spend some time on that call this morning to gain a better understanding of how we're handling things from an operational perspective. So picked up a lot of good tidbits that some of these things have already been mentioned, but and I'll just kind of go through my notes I took this morning. I think we're seeing volumes are obviously down, but it just depends on by specialty. We're actually seeing a lot of increase in emergency cases, emergency caseloads at our hospitals that have that capability. And a lot of that is coming from obviously GP hospitals. We are seeing a slight slump in referrals from GP hospitals. And, we do have a couple of GP hospitals on the network, but everything is mostly specialty in the ER. And we are seeing that GP, right, at least initially, we're seeing more of an impact at our GP hospitals than we are at our specialty and emergency. A lot of these services and things have been scheduled out for a while. Just this morning, one of our group presidents did mention that they're starting to see some cancellations from some of the more specialty type, elective type procedures. But, if your dog swallows a tennis ball, you got to deal with it. But if it's something that can wait, people are starting to cancel those things. So we're starting to see, we're just at the precipice of this thing. What else? Oh, one of the things, and I believe that Debbie mentioned that we've implemented in all of our practices is the split operational strategy. We, obviously with, over 3,000 employees, I think we already have had a few people that have either been quarantined or actually come down with it. And we had one hospital that had to basically shut down an entire service because they had to quarantine everybody. So I think it is a great practice to recommend that where it can be done in larger hospitals where they have that split operational strategy like Debbie mentioned. We are making an effort to move more business. I think somebody else mentioned this as well, to telehealth, which is obviously more of a challenge, especially in ER hospitals, but we are trying to make that as a real impetus because people aren't coming to the hospitals. And I did mention we are having daily calls with our group presidents who represent all the hospitals to allow us to stay on top of all of the operational challenges as well as people challenges that are coming up. So I was very encouraged this morning on that call. A couple of things as far as impact on business. In my role as business development, not surprisingly, have had a couple of people reach out directly to me this week that we thought were 18 months to 2 years out from being really interested in pursuing going down this path. And so I had a couple of people reach out this week, which again wasn't a surprise, and saying, hey, let's move this process up. Which I think as in acquisition mode, I think we're going to see more of that. One of the questions that came up that Deb wanted me to talk about was what do we see as far as the future, trying to look forward. And right now, just like everybody else on the phone, there's more questions than there are answers. I think some of the questions are going to be, how long does the current situation last? How will the economic downturn impact the flow of private equity money that's been steadily dumped into veterinary medicine over the last 5 or 6 years? And quite honestly, what is the appetite for some of these investors to withstand the downturn? I think with, some of the groups like Compassion First, as well as several of the other ones you guys work with, are well positioned to withstand the economic downturn and be there to help veterinarians as they come out of this, what's going to be the new reality. What is this new reality that we're all going to be faced with? And nobody knows how bad it's going to get before it gets better. And I think the thing that I took away from our operational call this morning and some of the internal emails I've seen, whether you are at a multi-hospital practice or just a 1 or 2 doctor practice, it's all about leadership. And for us, John Payne is sort of very steady course, has done a great job of kind of, I won't say calming, because you can't calm everybody's fears because the fears are real, but just being a voice of reason. And I think leadership that we can all exhibit to the people we come into contact with on a daily basis about the future of veterinary medicine. As some other folks have mentioned, we've been through this before, probably not this bad, but we've been through this before. And veterinary medicine has always adapted, has always changed to meet the current economic conditions. And I think that this industry is well poised to continue to do that. So I had a lot more notes than that, but I know we were pressed up against time, Deb, and it's dinner time on the East Coast as well. So
got it. And Doug, thank you so much. I mean, everyone has shared such valuable information. It's interesting though that Karen was the first panelist to share some insights. And I remember, one of the big themes that you mentioned, Karen, was leadership. And then Doug, here you are talking about the big role, important role of leadership, effective, positive leadership. So how interesting that is as a bookend, right? I know we're getting close. We wanted this to be about an hour, and we are mindful of dinner time or wherever you may be. However, and many of the questions that were submitted by members have actually been addressed by our stories and our insights and the facts. I just want to, while we've got, we'll take a couple minutes if you don't mind. Anybody on one of the attendees here has any questions for the panelists before we sign off? Okay. Well, I'm going to ask one question though. We've talked a lot about practices. We've talked about clients. We've talked about, parking lot. We've talked about drop-offs. We talk about all those kind of things. But I'm going to ask you to kind of go around a panelist, just to give just a few seconds of what are the things that you're doing for your self-care that we might learn something from as a tip. And we talked a little bit about this at the annual meeting, but what would you say during these times, especially if you've been holed up for 11 days like Robin? They'll start with you, Karen. Let's go back around. And Karen, what are you doing these days? Just give us a couple tips.
So I'm not traveling as much as I usually do, which means it's easier to eat better and eat healthier and get some regular exercise. It makes a difference. Doesn't you feel quite so claustrophobic if you get outside.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Martin, you're on.
Am I allowed to pass? I'm far from home with my kids, away from my wife. We're in Whistler, British Columbia. We got stuck here. I was in the same place at the same time as somebody who had the virus. So I'm holed up here until the 27th of the month before I can head home. So that it sounds like a sob story. It's not. It's actually great. We're comfortable. We're happy. We're able to take walks, and it turns out that British Columbia has really good Pinot. I had no idea.
There you go. Thank you, Martin. And
various bottles of Pinot Noir.
Well, maybe you get home soon. Now, what a story that is in itself.
Thanks.
Betsy, you're on.
Oh, please. My ideal time is binge watching. Like old television series. That's what I'm doing to stay healthy and upbeat.
Give us one series. What are you watching? What's an example of an old series?
Between MASH and Frasier, those are two. That's just sad. Sad.
Those are classics, man. Everyone should watch those. Thank you, Betsy. Nancy Dewitz, what you got going on? What are you doing?
So for me, I have my kids home, and it's really about reducing stress for me and for them because they are in a whole new world as well. So we've implemented cooking together, having fun together, going for walks together, and then planning out our day on who gets what when from the internet. So it's a lot of family time.
Very good. Thank you, Nancy. Debbie, what are you doing?
Well, I am blessed to live in the South, and outside here is gorgeous. So I actually was outside for about 2 hours today helping Mike with the project, and that was kind of nice. But we also have a golf cart that is covered in a clear plastic. So I feel like I'm out there in a bubble like the Pope going around through the town and going to the beach.
Can you see her? Can you see Debbie doing that, right?
The Boone mobile.
Yeah. Just watch the Pinot. Just watch the Pinot and the Boone mobile. So watch that combination, right? Yeah, that's great, Debbie. What image that is. Thank you for that. And Doug, before you go off for dinner, what are you doing these days to kind of keep it all together?
Well, I am spending a lot of time on the phone, but what I am doing is scheduling calls. So I try to have a half-hour break between calls, and actually I squeezed in 2 15-minute video workouts today between calls, and I got back on one call. I was panting pretty heavily because I didn't time it out exactly right, so I got to work on that. And I'm getting ready to go for a walk here in a little bit. But the most important thing is I have a senior in high school, and she's pretty disappointed about things she's missing out. So I'm doing quite a few things, and my daughter's a senior in high school, doing quite a few girly things that she would never, TikToks and those types of things I never thought I always said no to. And so spend a lot of time with her just trying to keep her happy and keep her mind off of missing the prom and missing her friends and those types of things. So just focus on what the important things are.
Good. Thank you so much, Doug. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you do have a question that comes up, jump on the COVID panel discussion forum that we have, and/or send a question over to Elizabeth. And again, we really appreciate you all joining, and I hope you all walk away with a little something. And again, look forward to more town halls. Maybe it doesn't all have to be, like Karen said, all in COVID-19, but we should do this more often. It's really great to see your faces or hear your voices and all that we have to share. Again, we're in this thing together. We wish the best for, again, your clients, patients, your businesses, and yourself as well. So until next time, VetPartners members, thank you so much and stay healthy. See you all later, everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, panelists. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.